Legal disclaimer. All right, so you can read it. Not here to diagnose, treat, cure, manage all the things. So now we've satisfied the attorneys. If you don't know me, this is me. I'm first and foremost a husband to Sarah. I'm a father to Nolan and Gavin. That's my foundation. That's who I am. We love to travel the world. We love to do some crazy adventures, and that's what we do. I'm also a developmental functional neurologist, an international educator specializing in photobiomodulation and neurorehabilitation. I've actually created methods to rehab the brain. Actually have, while still working through the creation of a whole new methodology. And we're reshaping regenerative medicine. So that's myself and my medical director, Dr. Madeira. We're really on the forefront of regenerative medicine as well. I'm also the co-founder of a company called 528 Innovations. In that company, we've actually developed new types of lasers based on the clinical work that I've been doing over the past 16 years or so. Founder of NeuroSolution Center of Austin and other related ventures, helping patients worldwide. So I've been around the block. You can see the white on my face. Anyway, I won't go any further into that. I put this in here just because I'm really excited about the podcast I have these days. Next week is going to be a big deal. So next week, one of my favorite people right now is Jack Cruz. If you don't know Dr. Jack Cruz, he's great. He's a neurosurgeon as well. He's the one that really started talking about this concept of light, water, and magnetism. And I've really piggybacked a lot of his work. But then at the end of the week, I actually get to talk to Del Bigtree. So he's going to be on my podcast. If you don't know him, look into the high wire. Just Google Del, D-E-L, Bigtree. He's just got a plethora of information. So he's going to be a guest on Friday. So that'll be cool. All right. This is just a small part of the team that we have in Austin. There's a lot of people not pictured here. I just wanted to throw that up there, and I don't know. These are some amazing people. If you've been in the office, you know the type of love and care that you can experience there. Just look at all the smiling faces. Okay, the agenda. We're going to get into the bioenergetics of the cell. Not as much as I would like to. We're mainly going to focus on these first order concepts of light, water, and magnetism. Because what the heck do I mean when I say that, right? And why should you care? That's what we're going to get into. And then we also need a good, deep understanding of the mitochondria. What are these things we call mitochondria? And again, why should you care? I've really had to pare this down, right? So this was several hours long, that I've had to really cut and, restrict into this time frame. But I'm going to do the best I can to deliver the high-level content, the high-level information. Also, feel free to ask questions. I think there's a Q&A after this, right? Okay, good. But if I say something and you want some clarification, raise your hand. This is for you. This is not for me, all right? So if we need to go on tangents and have little side discussions, I'm open to that. This is for you guys. All right, so this is Grayson. He is a nonverbal autistic kiddo. We started working with him a few weeks ago. And Grayson can communicate via rapid prompting method. And we've been having some interesting conversations. So I've asked him if he had anything he wanted me to deliver to you guys, and he said yes. So we're going to talk about Grayson and his story and what he wants to communicate at the end of this lecture. Cool? So you have to stay to hear what that is. Okay, so this information is for people that really want to understand light, like at its core, not just photobiomodulation. I'm not just here to talk about lasers, okay, but light and why it's so important, okay? we are going to explore the quantum realm to a certain degree, okay? Once we start talking about light, once we start talking about any of this kind of stuff, we have to dive into quantum physics just a little bit. Now, I'm not going to tell you that I understand fully quantum physics. Like, that's not what I'm going to say. That would be a lie. I don't think anyone really does, okay? But there are some things that we do know, and I'm going to try to help you understand, why this matters and just give you as much information as I can, right? So I say that to say this. Some of these concepts are deep, right? Like the ideas and the concepts of entanglement. That's kind of an interesting one to try to grasp. We're not going to go too deep into it, but again, some of these things are just hard to kind of explain and understand. So again, I'm going to do the best I can to pare it down. So, but I will start with this, okay? This is my foundation. Like, in the beginning, God said, let there be light, okay? Light was created before life. Light was the information. Light was the code. Light was the substance that all life requires to then propagate and move forward. And if, it's fine if someone is like, look, I don't believe that story. I think that, this was more of a Big Bang or whatever, which I think God could create the Big Bang. But, if you're going to take that approach, that's fine. Guess what? Light still came first in that scenario too. Okay? So no matter how we want to argue it, in the beginning, all of this started with light. And it continues with light. And it's organized by light. We can also disorganize this thing we call life with not so good light environments. So we have to pay attention to that. What does a cell, the brain, and the body need to properly heal and function? So let's get this to be a little more granular, right? So in functional neurology, we talk about fuel and activation. The brain, a neuron, our cells, whatever we're talking about, we have to have proper fuel, and we have to activate these cells, we have to activate these systems properly. So this is a parallel path. We must be properly fueled, we have to be properly activated in order to grow, mature, develop, all the things, okay? Light is one of the only things that is both fuel and activation. That was always interesting to me. And once we really get into the quantum components of it, you'll understand this a little bit more. But light is both fuel and activation. A lot of the information that I'm going to be going through comes from this book. So there's two people, well, there's more than two, but two people that really weighed in heavily on this lecture specifically, and that's Fritz Popp and then Roland Van Wyck. Roland Van Wyck wrote this book, Light and Shaping Life, Biophotons and Biology in Medicine. Roland Van Wyck is still alive. I believe this book was written in 2014, I think, if memory serves correctly. I think Roland Van Wyck should win a Nobel Prize for his work. I think Fritz Popp should win a Nobel Prize. But a lot of the information I'm going to be delivering is from this book. So if I'm making statements in these slides and you're like, Crawford, you're overreaching. Like, what are you talking about? That can't be. Like, I'm just delivering factual, objective information that is coming out of this text, okay? I have some crazy things I could talk about. I'm not going to go there. I'm going to stay as objective as I can. At the end, we'll kind of go there a little bit, but I'll tell you when we get into that realm, okay? All right. Light, water, and magnetism, right? So if you followed me at all, you've noticed the rhetoric shift over the years, and here recently, I've really been talking about this concept of light, water, and magnetism. And again, a lot of this was precipitated by Dr. Jack Kruse, and so we've had some offline discussions, we've had some good conversations, and my mind is just blown, and especially when I started digging into the work of Fritz Popp and Roland Van Wyck. But what does that mean? What does light, water, and magnetism mean? So first, we need to talk about light. We need to understand what it is. So light, This is our fundamental organizing principle. Again, nothing exists, nothing lives, nothing is organized, nothing is propagated without light. This is a factual statement, okay? Living systems are not only biochemical, but also biophotonic. We emit ultra-weak photon fields that carry information. These fields interact with matter in ways that help shape biological form, literally shape our form, right? So this is called morphogenesis, and maintain order within the system. So light shapes us and maintains this order. Think about a magnetic field. Now again, we're not talking about magnetism yet, but I'm talking about the biophoton fields, right? So think about iron shavings on a table, and you put a magnet underneath it, and you can start to see these iron shavings start to take shape, right? So that's just a way of conceptually thinking through how can a field give a physical shape, right? Okay, so light is information. Light shapes our life physically, and light maintains order within that living system. This can work for us, but this can also work against us. And I can go on a tangent here, but as we live in a world that is continuing to lean in heavier on artificial light, non-native EMF, and all of these artificial electromagnetic fields so heavily, this starts to weigh negatively on our biophoton fields, on our electromagnetic fields, etc. Okay? And again, this is not just conjecture. This is factual information that has literature references that we can dive into. Okay? What do I mean when I say ultra-weak photon fields? So we not only absorb light, we emit light. And I think it's interesting because at the turn of the 21st century, so early 2000s, there were some Japanese researchers that actually captured this on camera. What was really interesting to me, that I didn't put into here, but is these photons that they captured were actually green. They were green. And I thought that was interesting. And so that was one of many reasons that in our regenerative medicine procedures, I started to incorporate more green light. Again, there's many reasons why I'm doing that, but I found that interesting. Okay? So light is not only energy, but it's also information woven into the brain and body as entangled fields. Biophotons serve as a hidden regulatory language, guiding everything from development to disease and offering a bridge between matter and mind. So when I say a hidden regulatory language, I mean that. Think of Morse code going out via biophotons. So when I say biophoton, I mean your cells, your mitochondria inside of you are throwing photons. They're actually generating these biophotons. And that is serving as an information, or that's serving as information going to other cells and other systems in the body. It's like Morse code. That is a form of communication in your body. That sounds like esoteric. That sounds like, Crawford, what are you talking about? But again, this is proven. So this is a guiding principle that we need to break down and truly understand at its core truth. Again, the pioneers in this were Fritz Popp, Roland Van Wyck. Okay? So light is energy. So everyone knows that sunlight gives plants energy. This is called photosynthesis. But in our cells, photons also fuel and influence biochemical reactions. Energy from light helps molecules move, physically move, react, and create life. It organizes us. Light is information. So beyond energy, photons carry messages. Every cell gives off these ultra-weak biophotons. These emissions are like a whispering language between the cells. They carry instructions for growth, repair, and coordination. So again, the biophotons is the hidden language. So just like the brain uses electrical signals, the body also uses light signals. Fascial planes, like the fascia in our body, okay, transmit electrical signals and carry light signals faster than nerves. It's like an information highway. It's crazy. So these biophotons, again, they help organize how tissues develop. They help let cells know where to go. This is how healing begins, unless it doesn't, right? So when this light language gets scrambled, dysfunction and disease will emerge. And notice I underlined will. Okay, this is not like maybe it will, maybe it won't. No, again, this is a guiding principle. This is a core fundamental truth. So I think my next slide is a Wi-Fi comparison. It's not. Okay. Well, I'll go there when I get to the Wi-Fi. Okay. So when this hidden language within us begins to break down or become dysfunctional, that's when we start to see dysfunction and disease start to occur. That's when we start to see less than optimal function occur, right? It doesn't have to go straight to disease, but you'll start to see dysfunction, or you'll start to see altered healing, whatever it is, right? So your brain and body are woven together by light fields. These fields are entangled. Einstein called this spooky action at a distance, but he wasn't talking in biological terms. He was thinking more in quantum physics terms. But this entanglement applies to us biologically as well. So what happens in one part instantaneously influences the rest of us, right? This is like a symphony, so you get one wrong note or a disrupted photon. This can throw off the whole piece. It can have very dramatic and far-reaching implications. Think of the molecules within us, like all the physical stuff in us, like the hardware. Think of these photon fields like software instructions, right? So together, this links the physical matter with our experiential mind. And then that leads to discussions like the non-locality of consciousness and things like this, right? So some really big concepts and things that we can talk about, but and we kind of will talk about that at the end, right? It's really interesting. All right, so think of Wi-Fi, right? So you have the router. This is like the cells, the mitochondria, and they're sending out these biophoton signals. And the devices, like your other cells and your tissues, your systems in the brain, your networks in the brain, et cetera, they're picking up on these signals and know what to do. So if you have good, clean Wi-Fi signal, all's well. How many of you have kids that when the Wi-Fi goes off in the house, it's like, it's a bad day, right? What is the one thing that the kids will say as soon as the Wi-Fi goes down? No, they'll go, Mom! It's never Dad, right? Mom! Internet's not working. If you ever need to discipline your children, change the Wi-Fi password. The days of grounding are over, right? You literally just take away the Wi-Fi, all hell breaks loose, right? It's like, anyway, that's kind of the same thing that happens inside of us. When this biophoton field is disrupted, we literally start to get these abnormal, dysfunctional Wi-Fi signals start to scramble, right? Like you start to try to load a page, and it's like loading. Like, all right, this happens inside of us. This is our healing processes not working properly. Or, you know, I was talking to someone with a broken ankle, and they're like, man, my ankle just won't heal. They're going to have to do another surgery, right? That's an altered biophoton field, right? That is what that is at its core, right? Yeah, absolutely. So that would be considered non-native EMF. And the way I talk about that is if you were to put steak in a microwave, right? Leftover steak, put in a microwave, is it nice and juicy, or does it get dry out? It gets dry, right? So what happens with non-native EMF exposure, including Wi-Fi, is this dries up our exclusion zone water. And we'll talk about exclusion zone water and why that's so important. But yes, I do think that this is definitely driving some evolutionary changes that are not so great in our society, and why chronic disease continues to escalate, including things like autism, right? It's not all about Tylenol. If I get one more news request to talk about Tylenol, I'm going to lose my mind. So let's talk about Tylenol. Oh my gosh. All right, so speaking of exclusion zone water, that's a great segue. So light contains all the energy and information in the world buried in matter, which we must extract using water as a means of communication. So we have all of this information in the form of photons and biophoton fields, but in order to use it, in order to make sense of this information, we have to have a type of structured water within us and surrounding our cells, surrounding our proteins, making our enzyme systems run properly, etc. So, the water within us literally acts like a liquid crystalline display that's an LCD screen, allowing light to physically change its structure through phase transitions and enabling life on Earth to manifest. So light, especially in the form of red, infrared, and ultraviolet, can alter the arrangement of water molecules, causing what's called a phase transition, a change in state or structure, without necessarily turning into ice or vapor. These transitions can influence energy storage, signaling, and transport in biological systems. This is the second core principle that we really need to break down. The person behind this, okay, there's another slide before I get to that. So water's more than a solid. Okay, so when I'm talking about water, I'm not just talking about water. I'm talking about a special kind of water, right? So water is not just a filler. And just some random facts here. So we're roughly 70% of water. However, when babies are born, they're about 80% of water. By the time we're old and wrinkly, we're about 50-55% water if we're still relatively healthy. And that 50% mark is really important because once we start to get below that hydration level, that's when a lot of things start to go wrong. And now you're starting to understand why, is because at that point, we really start to struggle with processing all this information properly, all of this photonic information properly, right? We really start to struggle with that, and that's when we start to get organization problems within us. Let's just say that, okay? So, as water content and structure decline, cellular efficiency, signaling, and repair systems break down, we have a greater risk of dysfunction and disease. So there's this guy named Gerald Pollack. Okay, if you haven't heard of him, you should look him up. He's the one that really discovered exclusion zone water, or EZ water. So exclusion zone water is a special form of water found inside our cells. It's more organized than ordinary water. The molecules line up in layers like a crystal. The structure allows water to store energy from light and movement and helps the body send signals and power chemical reactions more efficiently. Think of exclusion zone water as the body's liquid battery. It holds a charge from sunlight, infrared energy, and even motion, fueling the cell's communication and repair systems. So this exclusion zone water, while it has many different properties to it, it's what we call piezoelectric. So it has this negative charge to it. And let me just ask, so if you twist your ankle, does it get bigger or smaller? It gets bigger, right? If you have cardiomyopathy, does your heart get bigger or smaller? It gets bigger. If a star starts to die, does it get bigger or smaller? It gets bigger, right? So that didn't have anything to do with exclusion zone water. I just threw that in there. But so the reason why we swell, right, is because that compressive force on our cells compresses the exclusion zone water around our cells, within our cells. Because it's piezoelectric, when you compress it, it generates more electrons. And those electrons can then fuel the electron transport chain and produce more ATP, or fuel for your cell, right? So it's really interesting how we're made, and sometimes it might not be so advantageous to start taking anti-inflammatories. That swelling effect, again, obviously there's times when you need it, like acute compartment syndromes or something like this, right? So I'm not saying never take it, but it serves a purpose, right? So that compression is compressing the exclusion zone water and actually fueling these liquid batteries within us. Unless we're cooked, right? And then we don't have it, and then you get stuck in a chronic healing crisis because you're not able to heal, okay? Why do you call it exclusion zone? There were a few reasons, but one reason is it excludes solutes, particles, and even some molecules, hence the name. So I always tell the story about a kiddo from Australia I was working with. He had tons of heavy metals and toxins and all kinds of things. He was just riddled. I mean, his test was like, everything was in the red. I was like, wow, did you like lick a nuclear reactor? Like, what are you doing? And, you know, I started looking into the history, and my computer just died. There we go. And he had done all the major detoxes. He had done IV chelation. He had done all the things, yet nothing was detoxing out. And I'm looking at him on the screen, and he's like stark white, right? I'm like, dude, are you a vampire? And, you know, I just start asking questions like, how much time do you spend in the sun? How much screen time do you get? Like, you know, all these just, you know, what seem to be random questions. And I said, look, I'm not going to use any supplements because you've tried them all. We're going to build your melanin stores. Melanin is a natural chelator, right? That's the stuff that tans your skin. We have melanin within us too, in our brain, neuromelanin and other things. But I said, we need to build your melanin stores. I need you outside as much as you can. We need to build what's called your solar callus, aka your tan. And I did put him on deuterium depleted water, which is actually what I'm drinking up here. And if he's inside, I want a red light panel pulsing on him the whole time he's inside. I want to reduce screen time. I want to wear him blue light blockers if he's ever in front of a screen. It just changed his light environment and put him on deuterium depleted water. That was it, right? And I said, all right, let's see if this works, right? And so we get to consult maybe 3 months later or something like that. Maybe it was longer. Maybe it was 6 months. I don't know. It's been a while. And he's detoxed, right? All this junk is coming out. And I'm like, wow, okay, so this stuff really works. So as you rebuild your exclusion zone water, it starts to literally detox all the junk out as well. So if we live properly, the way that we were designed, and we have the type of light exposure that we were designed to have, we really are healthier. Like that's how this works, okay? If we start to screw things up too much, that's when things go awry, okay? So, exclusion zone water, it's more viscous than bulk water. It carries a net negative charge. It does have very distinct absorption peaks, 270 nanometers, 975 nanometers, and 3000 nanometers. That's important to understand. It's important for me developing lasers to understand, right? You can extend, okay, the exclusion zone can extend hundreds of microns away from the surface, etc. Pollock calls this the fourth phase of water. It's what gives us our form, right? You know, we are 70% water, roughly, but 99% of us are water molecules, right? So the reason why we're not just bags of like water lying around is because this water has a structure. It has this like gel-like consistency to it, right? That's the exclusion zone water. So why are these wavelengths of light so important? So 270 nanometers, right? So exclusion zone water absorbs in the UV range. They used the spectroscope, right? This was like the fingerprint of the exclusion zone water. This is how they identified it. But then this 975 nanometer absorption range, right? This is a magical wavelength. This actually grows the exclusion zone water very effectively. It's the peak absorption spectrum, right? And when I learned that, I got real excited. I said, man, I'm going to get a laser that uses this wavelength, and we're just going to go to town on exclusion zone water. It didn't exist. So I created it. So that's, you know, the reason why we have 975 in our lasers, right? So this 975 nanometer absorption couples to vibrational rotational modes of water and is thought to drive exclusion zone formation when tissue exposed to this infrared light. 3000 nanometers, a little different. This is more the bulk water within us, right? It has the strongest absorption there. Using that long of a wavelength can be challenging because tissue does heat very quickly once we start getting that long a wavelength, so I don't tend to use that near as much. But again, that's more for bulk water, not for exclusion zone water like I was explaining. Okay, so how does this exclusion zone form? If you do go and read Pollack's work, he was looking at different foods, different herbs, different things that increase this exclusion zone water formation. Things like ghee, right? That was fantastic at increasing the exclusion zone water. Certain dosages of turmeric. There were certain things that he found would increase exclusion zone water formation. But it also requires energy input, mainly in the form of this infrared light. 975 nanometers is magical, right? So this light charges the exclusion zone growth. These photons pump water molecules into ordered arrays. Literally, these photons pump, literally move these water molecules and change their configuration. This process also separates charge. So the exclusion zone becomes negatively charged while the adjacent bulk water contains a positive proton or positive charge. This creates a battery-like system inside living cells, potentially fueling biological work. What are the biological implications? So this allows our cells to actually draw usable energy directly from light via water structuring, beyond just ATP alone, right? It helps with protein folding and enzyme activity, so this structured water helps stabilize conformations, reduces entropy costs, etc. Okay? Cytoskeleton and mechanics, these water layers will gel the cytoplasm, explaining why cells behave as a semi-solid body rather than bags of fluid. Signal transduction, exclusion zone layers can act as information highways, aligning with biophoton and electromagnetic signaling concepts. Again, the loss of this water structuring due to dehydration, non-native EMFs, oxidative stress, Tylenol, may impair cell energetics and signaling, right? So think of this whole process like changing gears in a car, okay? When you're using the right wavelengths of light, when you're in the proper light environment, it's like you're speeding down the interstate, like switching gears, like you're starting to hit 70 miles an hour, 80, 90, 120, right? You're speeding down the road, right? When you're in the wrong light environment, right? Like this room, right? It's like getting out on the interstate and like flooring it, but you're like in first gear, right? Your engine's like really trying to go and you're going like 20, you know? So to really shift gears and to really get your brain and your body and things to be fully optimized, it starts with light. Like, look, if that wasn't true, I wouldn't be talking about it. If anyone can prove me wrong that anything else is more fundamental than light, please tell me and present the evidence. Because I cannot find anything more fundamental to healing and to optimizing health than understanding our light environment and using light appropriately and effectively. All right, by constantly reshaping water, light turns into a communication medium. This may explain why life on Earth is inseparable from both water and sunlight, unless you're a vampire. Together, they form the stage on which biology can happen. Am I losing you? You following? You tracking? You smelling what I'm stepping in? All right. It got real quiet. No one laughed at my vampire comment. Noted. All right. Moving into the concepts of magnetism. All right. So life runs on fields, not just chemicals, right? Our heart, brain, cells were powered by these electrical currents. Wherever there's electricity, there is also magnetism. So we cannot actually separate those two, right? Life is both electrical and magnetic at its core. Dr. Becker wrote a great book called The Body Electric, if you want to read more into that. Okay? We have these things called mitochondria. They are our magnetic power stations, right? Inside every cell, mitochondria, of course, make ATP. As electrons move down this electron transport chain, they create tiny magnetic fields. We have billions and billions of these mitochondria within us, and so we have this constant, subtle magnetic orchestra forming within us, directing life. These electrons, they spin, right? This is where some conversations about entanglement can start to come in. They spin like little tops, right? That spin determines how they can interact with proteins and enzymes. These magnetic fields can shift the spin states of these electrons, changing how electrons behave. This is called quantum steering. Enzymes like cytochrome C oxidase, which is a really important enzyme in the electron transport chain, rely heavily on precise electron movement. Magnetism guides these electrons through their tunnels more efficiently. This means better energy flow, less waste, and greater cellular health. That works the other way too. Once we start to lose these proper spin states and we do not have the proper electromagnetic flux through our cell, just the opposite happens, right? We have less energy flow, more waste, and less cellular health, right? So all of this works in reverse too. Okay, so magnetism in biology, it's not all woo-woo, right? This is legitimate stuff. It's quantum steering of life's most fundamental processes. Without these magnetic influences, electron flow, and therefore life itself would be chaotic and inefficient. Think of electrons like bowling balls, right? I'm a terrible bowler, so when I bowl, I hit the gutter, right? So think of this concept of magnetism like putting bumpers on the bowling ball lane, right? So you bowl and it's like bing, 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 you still hit the pins, right? That's what we're talking about. All organisms have evolved under Earth's geomagnetic field. Circadian rhythms, migration, and even cell orientation can be influenced by this geomagnetism. Magnetism is not just inside of us, but also all around us. Here's a great book, Life on the Edge. Jim Al-Khalili is a quantum physicist, now really exploring heavily into the concepts of quantum biology. How do biological systems behave at the quantum level, and what does that mean for us, and what does that have in implications of healing and life in general, and consciousness? There's diagnostic and therapeutic relevance to this concept. We all know about MRIs. This works on pulsing a magnetic field into the person, which changes the spin state of these atomic molecules, and that's how you get the pictures that you get, right? We have therapeutic modalities like PEMF devices. I love the biocharger, which pulses out a ton of electrical current, right? The Interex is here, right? Interex, same thing. It's working on these concepts of electromagnetism. Direct current, Newbie. Is Newbie here this year? Garrett, is he here? I didn't see him. Okay, so NewFit or Newbie, love their direct current device. Microcurrent devices, right? Pulsed radio frequency devices, right? These are all the concepts that these amazing devices are designed from, right? That's why they work. Okay, so this concept of magnetism and light and structured water, these are not separate. That's why it's hard to just talk about light, right? Light's the information, right? It's hard to just talk about light and water, right? We have to really look at the full picture of light, water, and magnetism, okay? Magnetic fields influence how protons and electrons move in water networks, altering energy transport in cells. This ties magnetism back into the entangled fields concepts that we're discussing. Okay, that leads us into mitochondria. So mitochondria liberate electrons like semiconductors. This is a process fundamental to quantum biology and energy transformation in cells, right? So these mitochondria, this is where it's all happening. Without getting into the nitty-gritty, think of mitochondria like radios, okay? So the radio does not create the music. The radio organizes all of this incoming energy into something meaningful. That's what our mitochondria are doing, right? So we have the classic channel, right? This is food and oxygen. That's what we learn in biology textbooks, okay? We have light signals. In fact, I would say that's the most important part, most likely. Then we have Earth's electron signals. Then we have magnetic fields. All the things we've been talking about. All of this comes together through the mitochondria, and that's what creates the music of life, right? That's what creates this orchestra, the symphony, everything that we do and see, right? It's all coming through us via these mechanisms. You can also think of these mitochondria like multi-port battery packs. So we can charge directly from the wall. That would be like food and oxygen. Think of them like solar panels, right? Through light. Think of wireless charging. That's fields and magnetism. Or plugging into another device, right? So that's just one other way to think about mitochondria, right? So mitochondria store and redistribute energy no matter where it comes from. Okay? Circadian mismatches caused by non-native EMF, blue light, and poor light choices lead to chronic diseases like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, heart disease, and diabetes. The reason why I list those is because there's direct links in the research to those issues, right, with poor light choices. Okay, that's why I listed those. So this has direct impact on how our overall health, wellness, and healing capacity is directed. This has direct impact and consequences when healing from any type of brain injury, right? So, in an ideal world, in the hospital, after you have an acute injury, you're not in this cocoon of non-native EMF and fluorescent lighting and all of this stuff, right? That's not ideal. Now, I get it. We need acute care. It's very good. You know, the things that they're doing there, like they're saving lives. I get it. But the information here, like this is actual information. We need hospital systems to take hold of this, and instead of blasting us with all of this, you know, bad type of stuff, we need to start creating a better healing environment from day one, okay? And that's the type of conversation that I'm trying to have, but man, is it an uphill battle, right? Because if we could get better lights, if we could get infrared panels, if we could get lasers, if we could get windows, if we could get, I mean, all of these things, like these are the things that really can start to make a huge difference from day one with a brain injury or anything else that we're in the hospital with. You can facilitate some of that on your own, right? I've had multiple patients that they're in the ICU or whatever it is, and they take their laser in, or, you know, they do these things, right? Of course, you have to get it cleared with the hospital staff or sneak it in, whatever you want to do. And, you know, those types of things can happen. Okay. The question I pose to my students, right? Is the brain truly where we should primarily be targeting to enhance and leverage neuroplasticity in neurotherapeutics? Now, obviously, the brain's a big target. But our primary target should initially be the mitochondria. So, if you have the best car in the world, whatever that is to you, Lamborghini, Bugatti, Honda, whatever, right? If you have the best car in the world, okay, but it has no gas, what good does it do you? Okay, that's just the simple concept. So before I can change a network in the brain, before I can really start to stimulate these systems, before I can do my primitive reflex work or stimulate the trigeminal system or the vagal system or whatever it is that we need to do, I have to make sure there's fuel in the tank, right? We have to make sure that the mitochondria are healthy, because that's what's taking in all the signals and transducing it and producing this thing we call life, right? So without that, we're sunk. Does that make sense? Okay. The brain is the most light-sensitive organ we have. The brain is where the most dense mitochondria stores are found, okay? We have this thing called the suprachiasmatic nucleus that controls all the circadian biology within us, right? It is highly, highly sensitive to light, okay? So structured water and biophotons enhance signaling and efficiency in brain networks, period. Okay.
Can you go back just a second?
Sure.
It says it receives light through the
Retinohypothalamic tract. Mm-hmm.
So obviously through the eye.
Mm-hmm. Are you asking risk of scotoma? Right. So one thing I'm doing is in the clinic, I'm not recommending at home, we can leverage that. We don't know the exact dosages that are safe for the retina yet. What I do know is when we were making our lasers, the way that you classify the safety of the laser, so class 2 or 3R, 3B, or 4, is how many photons are getting through an aperture the size of a pupil from 100 millimeters away, right? This defines how safe a light source is for the retina. When you have too many photons or too intense of photons hitting the retina and it injures the retina, that's called a scotoma. It's like a sunburn on the retina. But so I have QEEG studies. We did some pilot research in my clinic. If I want to change a brainwave state, I can do it like that through the eyes. So we can use certain, brainwave settings or whatever on the laser for short durations of time, and you can actually see brainwaves change very, very rapidly. Okay. Now, the retinal hypothalamic tract, this is going straight into the suprachiasmatic nucleus, and that's actually setting in motion circadian biology principles, talking to all the organs, all the inflammatory systems, immune systems, all these types of things. It's really directing all of that, right? So that's what I was referencing there. I've spoken to a neurooptometrist that wants to do the studies with me to find those safety dosages for the retina so we can be more ubiquitous in use. Cool? It's really interesting. Okay. All right. Now, let's talk about Grayson. All right. So, like I was saying, so I was not going to bring any of this up. All right. And so we started working with Grayson. Like I said, he's a nonverbal autistic kiddo. And has anyone heard of the telepathy tapes? Okay. If you have not, I would just say take a look at it. Listen to at least season 1. All right? Because you're either going to like what I'm about to say or you're going to start throwing stuff at me. And that's okay. I can catch. So Grayson uses a method called rapid prompting method where he can spell words. And so when they started doing this with him, it was profound because he had so much information, so much knowledge, and was able to communicate so effectively that it blew everyone's minds. And so I asked the parents, I'm like, look, I've been studying this for years, and I've been waiting for a kiddo like yours to come in my office, right? He's rare. Can I continue to have dialogue with him through you, of course, right? And so they said, yes, of course. And so I've been talking with him, right? And I've always had a theory because in the telepathy tapes, they look at brainwave patterns in kids that can do this. And the interesting thing to me is that it was the same brainwave patterns that I oftentimes will see in a kiddo in a locked-in state. And so I've always thought, I wonder if these kiddos have this similar capability, right? Because in the telepathy tapes, you'll consistently hear about children going to the hill. And the hill is like this metaphysical place where they can communicate with each other and others from all over the world. And I know that sounds crazy. And that's okay. You shouldn't just blindly accept what I'm saying. It should sound kind of crazy. But when they started to objectively study these things, the amount of truth behind it was nuts, right? These kids would be communicating for years with each other on different sides of the planet. And then when the parents got them together, it's like, oh my gosh, they're actually talking to each other. And there's more to it than that. But like I said, I would first say, just listen to it. One of my mentors always said, have a mind that's open to everything yet attached to nothing, right? So be open to the concept that maybe this is potentially true. And so I asked Grayson, I said, hey, I have this conference coming up. I've always had this idea, right? Once I started learning about these abilities, if kiddos that are in this locked-in state, can they also go to the hill and can they communicate in other ways too? And this is what he said. He said, yes, you're correct. They do communicate in different ways. I don't know how, but I do know they go to the hill. My thought is that God wants people like me to help them while they're in pain. Maybe that's why they're at the hill. I believe God has a plan for them too. Please keep me in the loop on this. Other people need to understand like you do. We see them and help comfort them. Others also keep them company. His plan is for us to keep them safe. Not sure if that answers the question. You're on the right track looking into this. Now is the time to prepare the speech for your conference. Please mention me to these people. I want to help you. Can I please podcast soon? We might need to come. Okay. He wants to do a podcast. We're going to do a podcast with Grayson. So his mom tells me he didn't know I was speaking, right? They didn't tell him anything about this conference. I had not yet written a lecture. That really didn't happen until recently. And so this was him saying, hey, dude, you haven't written your stuff yet. Put me in the lecture. And so that's what I did. I'm like, what? I don't know. But I think this information, number one, I'm not going to act like I know what's going on. Okay? I'm not going to act like I have all this figured out. I don't. But it's very intriguing. And Grayson's been able to uncover certain things to me that have been just completely mind-blowing. And then some other kiddos I've spoken with as well, right? So another interesting thing that happened, I was asleep one night, and all of a sudden, like literally, out of nowhere, Grayson pops into my dream. And freaked me out, right? I was like, oh my gosh. And he looks at me in a dream and he says, let's change the world. Grayson's a high energy kid, right? So it was like, oh, let's change the world. It was like this really energetic thing. And I'm sitting there trying to talk to him in my dream. And I'm going, just trying to get it out, right? And my wife like shakes me awake. She's like, what is wrong with you, right? Which is, this isn't something that happens, right? I never do this. And she was like, man, you were like whimpering in your sleep. And I was trying to talk to Grayson, right? And so I started thinking, why did he do that? So I just asked him. And he said, he's visiting me in my dreams because he needs me to understand what it feels like to be non-speaking so we can move mountains and change the world. So Grayson has never met Millie, but he said he used the term moving mountains because that's a slogan for Millie, right? So, which clearly caught my attention. Yeah. So, again, I have no idea what that means. I'm not going to pretend like I have all this figured out. But what I will say is that your kiddos, whether they're in a locked-in state or whatever they're in, they're present. They're deeply present. Their ability to communicate, even though maybe it's not verbal, but their ability to communicate with you on the human level or even the metaphysical level or whatever you want to think about is there and it's profound, right? And there's so much that they have to teach us. And that's what I've been trying to figure out for years now. What are they trying to teach us? And little kiddos like Millie, little kiddos like Grayson, like it's just so cool that they're all kind of coming together right now around us. And we're learning so much, and I'm so excited about this. So, that's all I have to say. All right. So, let's... So do we just go right into Q&A? How do we do this? We, like, open a bottle of wine or something? Like, does anyone have questions? Yes. So the question is, do we use lasers to put light into the brain to promote healing and growth? And the answer is yes. So we'll do this various ways. I will do it indirectly through a process called blood illumination, and that is something I found in old Russian literature where you can actually illuminate arteries and have effects downstream from wherever that blood is pulsing. So if we want to have like a generalized impact on the brain and really introduce the secondary and tertiary and quaternary influences of photobiomodulation, we can laser over areas like the carotid arteries, the vertebral arteries, etc., and have some pretty profound impacts on the brain. But then we can also use it transcranially as well. So light does actually penetrate the skull, okay? And that's conclusive. That's very well defined now. Light will penetrate the skull. And so depending on what we're trying to achieve, that's how we'll figure out what wavelength or what frequency we want to pulse or whatever. But yes, we can laser directly over the brain and see some really profound impacts from that. Yes, absolutely. We've worked with newborn babies. We've done even our regenerative medicine procedures. We've done on 5-month-old babies. So yes, we work with teeny tiny little babies. Mm-hmm. There was a question over here somewhere. No, was it you? Yes. So you're asking about the exclusion zone water? So exclusion zone water is produced at complex 4 in the electron transport chain. So we have these complexes within the mitochondria. So we have complex 1, 2, 3, we have cytochrome C oxidase, complex 4, and then the ATP synthase pump. Think of this system like playing hot potato with electrons. So as these electrons are moving through these complexes, what's happening is we're creating a proton gradient. So hydrogen molecules are funneling up into the inner mitochondrial space. That's creating a gradient. And then at the end of this, because of the electromagnetic flux it's creating, these hydrogen molecules are ending up over here towards the end. And when the concentration builds up, they start going through the ATP synthase pump, okay, which is literally a rotary motor, like a pump. As this is happening, at complex 4, we're producing exclusion zone water. So we're producing this type of structured water that I was talking about. And then through the ATP synthase pump, we're getting our ATP. So this is happening constantly within us, right? So it's through light exposure, it's through the foods we eat, it's through all of those types of mechanisms that's developing, or that's driving it. I'm drinking deuterium depleted water, okay? So that's 5 part per million deuterium depleted water. So deuterium is an isotope of hydrogen. So we have protium, deuterium, and tritium. Protium is light hydrogen, meaning light as in light, not heavy. And then we have deuterium, which is heavy hydrogen. It's the same molecule, but with an added neutron, which doubles its mass and makes it, when it tries to go through the ATP synthase pump, is too big, and it'll shear the system, driving what's called mitochondrial heteroplasmy, driving inefficiencies. So if we have too much deuterium built within us, it creates a lack of efficiency within our mitochondria. There's connections between deuterium buildup and cancer. There's actually a good amount of that. We do need some deuterium in us because it acts as a signaling process to replicate, right, for cellular replication, which is why too much of it is connected to tumor growth. So the exclusion zone water is a natural deuterium depleted water that we create within us. So I'm not saying you can drink deuterium depleted water to replace your exclusion zone water, although it does help. But if you truly want to increase your exclusion zone water, eat lots of ghee and get good sunlight, and then leverage that 975 or similar nanometer wavelength of light.
I had the opportunity to meet Veda Austin, and she works with the 4th phase of water, but it's like this in-between state between frozen and liquid, and it's where water communicates with her, and she's been able to use it to heal and to make artwork and all kinds of amazing things. But I'm wondering how, if there's a similar way that light can communicate
The answer is yes. But the thing about light is there has to be something to transduce the message. There has to be something that, because light in and of itself is literally information, okay? Without anything to transmit or transduce that information, like it doesn't, like we can't use it, right? One concept is the concept of a black hole, right? A black hole is black because no light is escaping from it. And Stephen Hawking actually looked into, or actually discovered that I forget what the fragments were that they found at the event horizon, like on the edge of the black hole. There was no information in it, right? There was no information in that substance being emitted, which was very abnormal, right? That didn't make any sense. But it's because the light cannot escape the black hole. So I don't know if that answered your question. Okay. Yes.
So I'm understanding that mitochondrial dysfunction is common for children with brain injuries and abnormalities. I'm wondering, would you say that every child or person, doesn't have to be a child, every human with a brain injury that you can visibly see has a dysfunctional mitochondrial system? And if so, what is driving that dysfunction? Is it coming from a place of inflammation or too many signals, not enough signals? I'm saying like ipso facto, how is A causing B?
It's so multifactorial. I mean, it really is. I mean, let's just pick on inflammation for a second, right? So when there's an injury, okay, in the brain, there's something called an energy crisis. The energy crisis, think about Texas when it freezes over and everyone goes inside, turns on the heater, we tax the electrical grid, right? So we start to get rolling blackouts. So when there's a brain injury, there's an energy crisis that starts to happen. That means we rely more heavily on our mitochondrial stores. We need them to produce more efficiently, right? Now, over time, we can have things like the no reflow phenomena. We can have things that start to propagate more energy crisis if we don't deal with it. And something that does propagate that is bad light environments. But what you'll start to see is a buildup of oxidative stress within the intermitochondrial space. Think of mitochondria like engines, right? And they have gears turning. So just like your car, you have to keep that properly oiled, otherwise there's too much friction and start to break down too quickly. The oil inside of the mitochondria is superoxide dismutase. Superoxide dismutase is a very powerful antioxidant, and it combats the oxidative stress or inflammation within the mitochondria. So there's so many different factors that are working at the same time, right? Now, if we use the proper wavelengths of light and we restore mitochondrial function and organization, because it's highly mitochondrial, but it's other things too, right? We have ultra-biophoton fields globally, right, when this happens. Then that starts to work on the core of the issue, right? That doesn't mean, don't focus on inflammation or all the other things. You still want to do that just to, get results as fast as you can. But we need to understand at the fundamental level, like where we came from and what really drives this organization within us. Does that make sense? Okay. If we don't, okay, you heard me mention mitochondrial heteroplasmy. That heteroplasmy rate begins to increase exponentially. So heteroplasmy, when these complexes are nice and close to one another, it's easy to play hot potato and produce cellular energy. As those complexes start to get further apart, we get less and less energy efficiency because we're further apart. It's less efficient. That's, in a nutshell, heteroplasmy within the mitochondria. So as inflammation starts to build up, as these electromagnetic flux fields become more abnormal, all of this stuff starts to kind of fall apart. And what does it do? It expands. It gets bigger. Same concepts we were talking about earlier, right? So as things get bigger, we compress that exclusion zone water, flood more electrons into the system to make up for this heteroplasmy rate and drive more ATP, and then start to shrink everything back down.
So it's really not helpful to just not to make a pun here, but to laser focus on one aspect of this whole chain that's all interconnected.
If I had to laser focus, I'd, pick up my laser. So, but it's because of the fundamental concepts of light. Yeah, absolutely. But we do so more, I definitely focus on more than that. We didn't talk about any of the functional neurology principles because we have to activate these systems as well. That co-activation process is so important, right? So if I want to target, let's say you have a left temporal lobe, injury, right? So we have an injury here, right? So if I just use the laser there, okay, that's good. Okay, sure. But what if I increase the metabolic rate of those cells in the temporal lobe, right? So I increase their energy demand. Now I can have a more precise targeting. I could be more specific with the laser use because I increase the metabolism of that network, right? So that's the concepts that we're doing. So doing a therapy, activating systems, and then either using a laser during that activation or immediately after, right? Now there's other ways to prime a system, and that's where we'll use like blood illumination and those types of strategies. And then we'll activate, and then we'll use a laser more specifically. We always do all those things. Mm-hmm. Yes, all those things plus more. Yes. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry? It's this little place called Amazon. Yeah. So if you go on Amazon, you put in modern life deuterium depleted water. It's the best one that I've been able to find. It's 5 part per million. Most of them are in the 20 to 25 part per million range. It's expensive. It's like $160 for a case. And you don't want to drink like tons of this every day. I'll drink like 1 bottle a day, right? For a kid, we're doing like 1/4 of a bottle to maybe half for like a little kid. Huh?
What are your thoughts on the live wave coming with the X39 patch, which is the technology you're basically
Yeah, Dr. Stillman's a friend. Yeah, so I don't know the people in the company, right? I haven't spent a lot of time working with them or using them or whatever. I assume that they're leveraging and trying to enhance the biophoton fields. Okay.
photon patch is supposed to use your own body's infrared light to
Right.
stimulate stem cells and heal.
Right.
So
I actually recently started talking with Dr. Stillman, and I'm going to talk to him more about that. I just haven't done it yet. Yeah, absolutely.
just wondering, what is the sort of the optimal light environment, things that we can achieve?
Optimal light environment. Fantastic question. Okay. So, optimal light environment. Think of the sun, right? Our brain, our body, everything is designed to operate around the sun, right? And as the sun starts to come up over the horizon early in the morning, this is the most important light exposure you can get, okay? It has the highest amount of red light in the sun's waves at that point in time of the day, okay? This early morning sun exposure actually starts to spin our TCA cycle. So it literally starts to turn on all the neurotransmitter systems and all the energy producing systems, right? So it is vitally important, okay? You can't substitute it. But interesting side note is that they've done 1 or 2 studies, and they actually found
Get up and watch the sunrise?
when I'm not working, yeah. But it's been found that red light, specifically in the eyes, was more effective early in the morning than later at night, right? Side note. So we want to experience that early morning sunrise. If you're a healthy individual, 15, 20 minutes, that's probably enough, okay? If you have some type of disease process or health challenge or something like that, you're going to want longer, 30 minutes, an hour, something like this. No sunglasses, okay? We don't want sunglasses. And you don't have to be like staring into the sun, okay? Let's not burn our retinas. That would be bad. But being outside, preferably, as little clothing as possible so you're getting this optimal exposure. on the earth, so you're getting that geomagnetic effect, right? So that is super important. Next is going to be at solar noon. So when that sun is peaking, we're getting much longer wavelengths of light, okay? Deeper penetrating. This is really important for the microbiome. So we want to get good sun exposure on our belly midday. How long is going to depend on your solar callus. Like, you know, for some people, they spend 5 minutes in the sun and they start to burn, right? We have this internal system that tells us when we're getting too much sun, right? We don't want to get a sunburn, but we also want to build up that tolerance level, right? So how long at noon is going to be dictated on your tolerance, right? So maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that, right? But we want to get exposed on the belly as well. And then we want to be outside as the sun starts to set, right? So that our brain starts to go, okay, it's bedtime, right? We need to start preparing for bed, etc. And we start to downregulate all those systems. And then here's the important part. Once that sun goes down, we don't want to go inside and just start blasting our retinas with high frequency intense light, right? That's like we did all the things right throughout the day, and our brain is like, all right, it's bedtime. And then we turn on the TV and it's like, wake up, right? It's like, it's not good. The frequency of light coming off of screens is patented. It stimulates our mesencephalon. So it starts to produce more dopamine, cortisol, epinephrine, like it starts to wake our brain up, right? So we don't want to do that. If we are looking at a screen, we want to be wearing blue light blocking glasses. There's an app that you can download. It's called Light Meter. And you can actually go around your house measuring the light intensity in your house. You want to keep that light intensity below 30 lux after the sun goes down. And there is research for that. If you keep your light below 30 lux, you won't disrupt circadian mechanisms. If your light exposure, your intensity is above 30 lux, then you start to get dysfunction in your circadian rhythms, okay? Beyond that, if you're trying to accelerate healing, red and infrared wavelengths are vital. There's a lot of information that needs to be researched with green. So that's kind of the new kid on the block right now. There is good research. It does home stem cells better than red in some of the research that I've read. But I think there's further reaching implications to green wavelengths. So.
As far as like Kelvin scale, I mean, is it blue light versus like tungsten light? Does it matter at all? Just what kind of the actual Kelvin?
I'm sorry? Oh, Kelvin. Okay. So, yeah, so 5,500 Kelvin is, I think it's 5,500 Kelvin is equivalent to solar noon. So I think in the office, our lights, I try to keep them at 3,000 Kelvin or lower. So if you come into our office and you start working with us, you'll notice it's not very bright. Like some rooms have no lights, but we try to keep it around that 3,000 Kelvin mark. But it also depends on the time of day, right? So if it's solar noon, yeah, you can have 5,500 Kelvin, like, you know what I mean? So that kind of depends on that. Cool. Yes?
Can you walk us through like initial consult, how long appointments are, how long, like ongoing, how long the child will see you?
Sure.
What it looks like to work with you.
Yeah. So the question is, can I walk through initial consult and ongoing care and what that looks like, et cetera? So the best people for specific information, Donna and Carol over here. But so we like to have that initial consult, whether it's in person or telehealth. That's usually an hour. Some people driving in will schedule a couple of hours. And from that, we're going to do a consult. We're going to do an exam. Based on that information is then what we're going to use to recommend what we call an action plan. Are we going to start with intensive care? Are we going to, how are we going to navigate this? I do like to start with intensive care, by the way, because neuroplasticity is the goal. We're trying to create sustainable change in the brain via positive neuroplastic changes. In order to do that, we need appropriate frequency, intensity, and duration of stimulus. So if you go to the gym, once every 3 months and do some bicep curls, you're not going to see a change. Our brain's the same thing. So we want to hit it hard. We want to change. We want to create some good momentum. And then at the end of that intensive care, no matter if it's a week or if it's multiple weeks or whatever it is, we're going to create a home care plan and teach it to you so that you can go home with tools and information so you can continue care. Follow-ups are going to be dependent upon your needs and abilities. We treat people from all over the world. And so, if someone in Australia needs us to weigh in on an updated home care plan, we'll do a telehealth and we'll walk them through what we need to do. Ideal scenario is being seen in person again, getting updated exam, etc. A lot of people want to do more intensive care. Some people don't. We'll change our home care. We try to be as flexible as possible. Yes. We might have our own dance party. I'll come back over here. I need to show some love over here. Does anyone have questions on this side of the room? You don't count. I'm kidding. What's up?
So when we first found out about you, we spoke to all of our doctors about it. We spoke with, all of the different specialties, neurology, neurosurgeon, all of the different specialties, and everyone said, we cannot see you. You're going to hurt our child. And we're like, you know what? What do you recommend? And they said, we're going to send you home on hospice. Your child's going to die. And I said, well, I don't really like that. So I think I'm going to try out this other guy. Well, don't see him. He's going to hurt your child. Well, what can you do for me? There's nothing I can do for you. Your child's going to die. Okay, well, I'm going to go see Dr. Crawford. And when we saw you, the stuff that you did was not crazy. I mean, it's like basic physical therapy stuff, but it's rooted.
I rebuke that.
Affects the brain. It's rooted in how it affects the brain, and you're working on the developmental process of the child. So it's very basic when you look at it from a top-down perspective, but everything that goes into it.
He just called my life's work basic.
Yeah. There's a lot that goes into it, but my question then is, what is the current? What is the development of the acceptance of what you do into the main medical community? Because there's nothing crazy that you're doing that they shouldn't be recommending.
Well, we're definitely gaining exposure quite rapidly. We've now had Dell Children's here in Austin refer patients to us, right? And that came from, I can't remember the name, but it came from the director of the pediatric complex neurological, disorder, whatever, right? Most recently, we had UT Southwest, UT Austin Med School or something like that. One of their neuro people came in wanting to start collaborating, right? This was unheard of, years ago. So we know that we're definitely gaining acceptance, gaining ground. So, yeah, I mean, I've had multiple phone calls with, you name it, surgeons, medical providers, whatever, and, they always start a little standoffish, right? But it's just a matter of speaking in objective, factual statements, and just presenting this information to them in a way that it's like, look, I'm not here for my ego, I'm here for this patient. That's what, like when I talked to your surgeon, right? That was my stance. It's like, I don't care what you think of me. That shouldn't matter. You shouldn't care what I think of you, right? And I had some thoughts about that person. But that's not why we were meeting. We were meeting to talk about Millie, right? And so that's how I spoke. And whenever I have those conversations, the information is usually very well received. And that's my goal, is to continue to move forward. I'm probably not going to enter those conversations talking about the non-locality of consciousness and, those types of concepts. But as long as I can reference texts and literature and, this kind of thing, and now we have so much clinical data, right? It's hard to ignore us now, right? We have a rather large database at this point in time. So yes, it's becoming more widely accepted. And we have a good following in the medical community behind us, right? So it's pretty cool. Anyone? Yes? So in my early career, we would, the concept of stress is what I was going off of, right? So if we're stressing someone too much, you'll start to see heart rate elevate, you'll start to see pupils dilate, you'll start to see respiration increase, we look for signs of stress. So we'll monitor vitals, we'll monitor the patient's autonomic tone to be able to dose most effectively, because when you look at the research, my big pushback in the field, and the reason why I have arrows in my back, is because clinically I was noting that we can push on these dosages, right? So if you go off the doses just from a research perspective, it wasn't enough, right? So think of like when you're sick, right? When you're sick, you need more nutrition, more hydration, more sleep, etc., right? So when you're sick, the hormetic curve changes. In photobiomodulation, it's called the biphasic dose response curve. And that's the concept of too little stimulus doesn't do anything. There's just the right dose. Too much can be harmful or deleterious. And this applies to everything, not just light. It applies to exercise, water, oxygen, everything, right? Everything has a biphasic dose response curve. But what was not elucidated through the research was what happens when someone is sick or is healing from an injury or something like that, right? And what did I say earlier? When you get a brain injury, you have an energy crisis. You need more energy, okay? And so I started thinking, okay, we need to use higher dosages. How do I make sure I'm not causing harm? And so I had to start monitoring mainly the autonomic nervous system. We're looking for signs of stress response, okay? And then if we start to see that, we start to reduce dose, we start to activate systems differently. Cool. Yes? So mainly through keto? Okay, so pause. All right, so people eating a keto or a carnivore diet, and they're not getting the first early morning sun exposure. The key to making these diets work is early morning sun exposure. Because if your TCA cycle isn't spinning, yet you're flooding it, you're getting backed up. Okay, that system is going to start to break down. Okay, you can actually start to see increases in inflammation, increases in acidosis, etc., right? If you don't get that early morning sun exposure, that is key. Okay, continue. Good. Yeah. Yeah. Well, so we can, getting your light right is something you can do without us, right? I mean, that's the whole, sun exposure and doing all the things right that I was talking about earlier. So, I mean, look, I made the best laser on the market. I'll tell you that. I'm biased. I made it, but it's not better than the sun, right? Nothing's going to beat that, okay? But what we do want to do is when we're activating these systems, we do want to leverage light to increase neuroplasticity at a faster rate. That's where the lasers come in. I have mixed thoughts on keto, right? I don't think it applies to everyone. It can be a very useful tool. For children, we do want to monitor acidosis. We want to make sure that they're not becoming too acidic. So that's one thing. Kids do need carbs, okay? I will say using spirulina can be very effective because And I never used it until I found Energy Bits, right? That's the brand, is Energy Bits, because it's the only medical grade algae on the market. So when you grow algae, it has to be in an extremely clean environment. It will absorb anything around it, right? Any kind of toxin, any kind of chemical, whatever. That's why I didn't use it. And then when you process it, if it's heated, it's going to denature enzymes. It's not going to be near as effective. So Energy Bits is grown in triple purified water. They never heat their products, so it has live enzymes in it. It's phenomenal. But I say spirulina because, number one, there was a study in Japan on failure to thrive babies where they used spirulina, and they had phenomenal outcomes with failure to thrive. It has the same amino acid profile as breast milk, so it has all the essential amino acids in there. It has 3 times the amount of protein as steak, but there's no cell wall, so you can actually assimilate this protein more effectively. What I like about it is spirulina is the only substance of anything ever tested, meaning medication, supplementation, anything, to increase superoxide dismutase inside the mitochondria. It's the only thing. It's because mitochondria essentially evolved from a form of spirulina, from that form of algae. And so there's a really unique benefit to using spirulina. So while keto is good for some individuals, sometimes it can be too hard and too stressful on people as well. And so you can cycle on and off of it. Again, monitor acidosis levels, making sure that the person doesn't become too acidic. Use it as a tool, not as a prolonged diet, in my opinion. What if you live in a cold climate? Okay, so latitudes matter because where we hail from dictates our mitochondrial DNA, right? So and what's the term? It's shoot, of all the things, I can't remember this one. Anyway, like if your lineage comes from Norway, right, and your mitochondria are okay with that, and you're still living at a higher latitude, great, go outside and be cold, right? It's so one thing is the mechanism that allows us to survive in the cold, right, with less of the type of sun that you get at the equator. That mechanism that allows us to be at that latitude is the cold, right? Because cold increases semiconduction, right? So cold exposure actually increases electromagnetism, the electromagnetic flux through us. And so that's the lever, right? If we're at a higher latitude, we need the cold exposure. That, if we come to the lower latitude, we get different wavelengths of light. We have different light exposure there, and we don't need the cold as much, right? So don't want to just throw your baby in the snow. I get it, right? So we have glabrous skin on the bottoms of our feet, the palms of our hand, and the top half of our face. So we still need that cold exposure if we're living in those higher latitudes. And so that's where you can start, right? You can get cold exposure on the bottom of the feet, palm of the hands, and on the face. Mm-hmm. Yep. So it is important to get that sun exposure. The retina is the most sensitive to light, obviously, so that's still beneficial to be getting that light exposure through the eyes. Cool. Good questions, yeah.
Besides the spirulina, are there other mitochondrial supplements that everyone can benefit from, or does it vary individually based on their?
Yeah, so ubiquitously, things like N-acetylcysteine, alpha-lipoic acid, those are great ones just for overall general mitochondrial health, glutathione production, etc. I do like glutathione. Delivery systems matter. I do like a product made by Auro, A-U-R-O. It's called Gluteryl, G-L-U-T-R-Y-L. It's a topical spray for glutathione. It has the same or similar absorption as an IV glutathione treatment, but you don't have to do the IV. You just spray it on the belly. You'll smell like a fart for about 30 minutes, and it's kind of sticky, but that goes away. So I really like that product. Glutathione dosing is kind of tricky. And again, administration routes can be kind of tricky too. But it's very important. So that's a big one. Minerals, vitally important. B vitamins, vitally important. And then our essential fatty acids. The essential fatty acids are DHA, EPA, and C15. So those are my comments. And ghee. Ghee is really important. GHEE. EE. Ghee. DHA, EPA, and C15. C15 is a product called fatty 15. It's a recently discovered essential fatty acid, very concentrated in breast milk. Now there's studies that the company has done. Stephanie Van Watson's the researcher that discovered it. And they're showing that it has tremendous effects on metabolism. They've studied it for diabetes, for inflammation, but now they're also studying it for brain development. Basically, the higher your C15 levels are, the better your brain develops. And also, the higher that your C15 levels are, the lower all-cause mortality. So the more C15 you have in your blood, the less likely you are to die from anything. Fatty 15 is the only one. Yeah. And it's an isolated form, so even if you have dairy issues, you can still consume it.
And for the DHA and the EPA, is there a brand that?
DHA, we like the brand Apex Energetics. It's called Brain E DHA. They have an algae-based product, which is called Phyto DHA. And then EPA, I like Zymogen's product. Zymogen, XYOMOGEN. Zymogen, XYMOGEN, something like that. I don't know. I can't spell. Ghee? Oh, what ghee do we use? We get it from Whole Foods. Some of the Whole Foods.
Are you talking about type 1 and type 2?
Yes, actually. Yeah. It mostly studied for type 2. Yeah. Type 1, there's studies, there's studies for photobiomodulation for type 2, but then also some for type 1. But yeah, for fatty 15, mostly talking about type 2, but I have to go back and look. I think they have some type 1 stuff too.
I'm curious. What's your favorite fun fact about light?
My favorite fun fact about light?
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much. I'm just curious. What's the one thing that is just like really cool to you?
So the coolest thing that the coolest thing about light, my favorite fun fact is you can entangle photons. And when I was looking at this, I wouldn't say I came up with it because someone came up with it before me, but I thought about it without knowing someone already thought about it. So I can still kind of claim it, right? But it's the concepts of biological down conversion. But if we're going to create what's called spontaneous down conversion in photons, you can actually take a photon and throw it at a crystal. It's a certain type of crystal. And that photon will burst into two photons. They call them sister photons because brother photons would fight and annihilate each other. That's a joke. And so these sister photons are forever entangled, meaning what happens to this one immediately has an impact on the other. And they can be at different, places in the universe, as far away from each other as you can imagine, and whatever happens to the one happens to the other. So the concepts of down conversion are probably my, that's my fun fact. All right, you asked.
That's the same with me, though. That's my favorite.
Okay, what else? Yes? It does. Yeah, whatever what's it called, your Sir Patrick type or whatever. The darker you are, you have different tolerance levels, to UV light. And like I said earlier, you don't want to get a sunburn. So the UV index does matter, but we have to have UV light, right? We can't live without it. the concept is building that solar callus so you can spend more and more time outside without burning, right? So when I lived in Costa Rica for a bit, when I first got down there, I could spend 20 minutes, and I'd start burning. And then by the time I've been there for a few months, I could be outside all day almost, and I wouldn't get a sunburn. So yes, the UV index matters, but you need to be listening more to your body. When am I going to start to burn? When do I need to go into the shade, etc.? Nosara? Nice. Oh, that's cool. It's an area I've not been to. We've been to, several different parts of Costa Rica. So I have to give a nuanced response. So we don't treat cancer. I'm a brain rehab specialist and a photobiomodulation specialist. We can help rehab someone having challenges from cancers. We can help with post-radiation exposure. That really has a heavy impact on the nervous system, and it's because it dries up the exclusions on water. We can have heavy implications there. There's some restrictions just with my medical director not wanting to even, have a chance at increasing cancer growth. And so some of our regenerative medicine procedures are not allowed for that population. But we've definitely navigated those cases. Obviously, we just need to talk through it and figure out what we can and cannot do and what the expectations are. There's some interesting information in photodynamic therapy for cancer. We don't do it. I know one provider that does it, but where you can actually inject a dye into the individual that has a rapid uptake into tumor cells. So you inject a dye, it's a green dye. And so these tumor cells, they have an uptake of this dye, and then the rest of the body excretes it over a period of, I think, 36 hours. And you go in with a high-powered laser, and the dye is a photosensitive dye or a photodynamic dye, and it'll absorb the wavelength of light that they're using and actually melt the tumors. So that's a rapidly progressing way to treat spinal tumors and brain tumors. I know there's been a few glioblastomas treated with it, et cetera. But yeah, so we can navigate it. We just have to be nuanced and understand what we can and cannot do. Yes?
Can you speak to the different strengths of the lasers that you have and how that compares to the Avant one?
So our Avant, our lasers obviously are innovated based on the things that I saw were lacking, not just from the Avant, but from all the lasers on the market. Okay, so I've had benefit to be able to use all the major lasers on the market. They're good. They're doing good work. We used the Avant for several years. I think it's great. I wanted more power, but I wanted a safer laser as well. And so we created a stronger laser, so it's more powerful. But we created an optical system that actually allows us to have a class 3R safety rating. So the Avant's a class 3B. The 528 is a class 3R. So it's more powerful, but it's safer. We also created a modular system. So as I continue to create new wavelengths, you don't have to actually get a whole new laser. You can just get the module, right? We have a software system that will help guide use. That's a safety thing, but it's also a usage thing. Like the first thing people do, they get the laser, like, okay, what do I do? So there's software, there's an app that'll help you know how to use it, where to use it, how long to use it, all this kind of stuff. There is some patented technology that I did not include. Well, it's not patented. I didn't put it in the patent. But it's because it is a way that we polarized the light. And it's a way that has never been done before. And since we're being recorded, I'm not going to explain how we did it. But when we think about polarizing a laser beam, this is a highly organized laser beam, right? So polarization, think about like You go to a school and there's recess and all the kids are playing around, but all those kids still have to come back into the school. So what do? You blow the whistle and they all line up. So now they can effectively come into the school, right? So think of polarizing light the same way. It's how we're organizing the light. The other way to think about it is rifling down a barrel, right? So when they introduced the concept of spinning that barrel down the rifle, you increased accuracy dramatically, right? So same thing. So we're using some concepts that have never been used before to polarize the light as well. We created our own cooling system because the main thing that fails on the Avant is the fan. It's the only mechanically moving part. When that happens, you have to send the whole laser in. You got to get it fixed, whatever. Our only moving part, we built it into the battery, so if it fails, which we actually haven't had any fail yet, we just send you a new battery. Let me count the ways, right? I mean, how many other things did I talk about? Basically, I wanted a laser that had more innovation, had technology that had never been used before, and no one was willing to partner with me to do it. In fact, I asked, and I was told no, right? Other companies liked status quo. I don't like status quo, so we had to make our own.
So when you have the, is it 808 and 975?
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain when you would use?
Yeah, so 808 has a ton of research behind it, right? So in the lower 800 nanometer range, 808, 810, there's a lot of research, whether impacting the brain. There's good research on the gut, so it's great for gut health. There's just a lot of research there. So I wanted to go to market with something that was very research-backed as well. 975 was the one where there was not near as much information on, right? There's not a laser on the market as 975 until we made it. So there still needs to be more research on that, and we'll do the research, but that takes time. If I'm using 975, the goal is exclusion zone water. Like that is the goal, increasing those battery packs in the cell. If I'm using 808, I'm driving mitochondria. I'm trying to produce more ATP. I'm trying to have that impact. I don't know if that helps answer your question.
So do you want both?
I want both.
I mean, you do, but.
Yeah. So 975 can do a lot of the things that 808 does, right? 808 still does have an impact on exclusion zone water, okay? It does, just not to the same degree as 975.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Yes?
Way off topic here, but maybe it's relevant, I don't know. One of your podcasts, probably early last summer, you talked about when you see patients, you look at their feet or stuff for blood flow.
Yes.
Okay, my question is, okay, so you look at your feet and you see that there's, I don't know, how do you know that you're getting good flow at your extremities and things? And if you're not, how do you correct that? I mean, is that use light, use EMF, I mean, what
Mm-hmm.
those things to
Right.
for that?
Yeah. So.
My feet hurt.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I'm a brain guy, and oftentimes I look at someone's feet as the first part of my exam, and I do that because if there's abnormal blood flow in the feet, I know there's abnormal blood flow in the brain. This is the most distal, the furthest away from the heart as you can get. And plus you have gravity helping you there, right? So I'm looking for changes in capillary refill. I'm looking for fungal growth in the toenails. I'm looking for, all these different things that are telling me if blood flow is adequate or not. And then it becomes a game of, okay, what's driving this? Is it a central mechanism? Is it an altered autonomic state, right, that we need to look at? Could it be peripheral? Is there some type of peripheral issue, compressive forces or inflammatory things going on, or what's going on? Is it 1 foot versus 2? Is it what's going on? It literally is. We have to start investigating what's going on. The nitric oxide synthase pathways are very important here. So looking into nitric oxide, Dr. Nathan Bryan, I did a podcast with him, came out yesterday. He has the product, was it N1H1? It's a great product. that's a good place to start if you're having peripheral blood flow issues. But laser and photobiomodulation are huge. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
So you said that you can use them transcranially, but what if you've had, because I'm sure a lot of children here have had this as well, a cranioplasty and you have titanium, not swollen.
Yeah. So I have several different comments on that, right? So Einstein discovered the photoelectric effect, and so when photons interact with metals, it generates different photons and electrons. So I'm not going to tell you that the photon goes through that titanium. It's attenuated, but you do get this production of additional photons and electrons from using it. But I'm not going to be using the laser over titanium, right? I'm going to be working around it. And I've never had anyone with a completely, covered head. But you can also use the concepts of blood illumination to have a downstream impact, right? So if you have this entire right hemisphere covered, I can leverage the carotid artery, right? Because it's perfusing, the majority of the cortex on the right side. Yeah, I can use the vertebral artery to then influence the brainstem and even the cerebellum. So I'll use blood illumination more in those patients.
And having a huge shunt isn't contraindication.
It is not. Awesome. Very dependent on the individual, and also depends on how home care is going. We need to continue to stimulate these systems, to continue to make positive neuroplasticity. The brain is always changing, so we need to understand that. So if we're not pushing it in the right direction, it's going to be assuming the lowest energetic state, right, which can then start to develop negative neuroplasticity. So if we do intensive care, we write a home care, and that's being done very well, great. My goal is for you to be as least reliant upon us as possible. Some people can do that very effectively, some can't, and so that will then dictate how often someone is seeing us. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm about drained. I appreciate the questions. And if you want to talk more, you can come see us down the hall. But thank you for your attentiveness and for sticking around. I appreciate you.